So what's up guys, I am BlackOpsAmazing, welcome back to another video where today we're going to be answering the big question, the one that everyone's been asking, where is Eddie? Now this has been asked since the beginning of Black Ops Cold War. Since D Machine, since we had the intro cutscene and we saw Samantha Maxey's grown up for the very first time, we know that the Cold War story is a continuation from Tag Richtofen. At the end of Tag, we saw Sam and Eddie walk off into the light, into this new universe we are in. So they are definitely both here together, but so far we've only seen Samantha. We don't know where Eddie is. And that's the big question. However, as we've gone on through the maps, we've got D Machine, Firebase C, Outbreak. We've gotten more and more intel that give us more and more clues as to where Eddie could possibly be and when we could be seeing him. As I said, it was all the way back in D Machine in the intro cutscene where we saw Samantha in this phone booth in Berlin talking to Weaver, and on one of the scenes a male walks past. He has a hat on, he's kind of looking down, but at one point he makes eye contact with Samantha. He looks at her, she looks at him, and he carries on walking by. When we saw this, everyone thought this has to be Eddie. And by the way, just in case you're new to the zombie storyline, Eddie and Richtofen are the same person. His full name is Edward Richtofen. He was called Eddie as a child and Richtofen grown up. This version of him, people call him Eddie. So yeah, it was in the D Machine intro cutscene when we first suspected that we could have seen Eddie. But the game released and he was nowhere to be seen. From an interview that IGN did with Treyarch, I've already covered this on the channel, but just going over this small portion that's relevant to this video. This is information from Craig Houston, who is the lead writer. He said, "I think the thing that's really important is that the previous incarnations, which we call the Ether story, which involve Richtofen and all those characters, that came to a definite end at the end of Black Ops 4's season. And we are passionate about not rewriting history. One thing I said is that those characters did what they did to try and create a singular world where zombies didn't exist, and unfortunately because of the experiments in World War II, they were only half right. This is no longer a time-travelling multi-dimensional story, this is grounded in Cold War." He continues on by saying, "At the end of BO4's storyline, we had two clear characters that needed to be referenced going forward, and that was Maxis and Edward Richtofen, the young versions of them both. So we have shown people what Maxis is up to. Any other characters that might reappear will be dealt with in later seasons." Coming from the main man himself, he tells us that at the end of BO4, there were two characters that needed to be referenced going forward, meaning in Cold War, and that was Samantha and Eddie. Samantha's already been referenced, but Eddie hasn't, and Craig tells us that any other characters that might reappear will be dealt with in later seasons, meaning Richtofen. He is going to appear at some point, but when? Well, in our latest maps, Firebase C and Outbreak, there is some intel that could be telling us we could be seeing Eddie very soon. We know for our next zombies map we are travelling to Berlin, which could include parts of Kino der Toten. There is a document called the Berlin Comment, which is a conversation between Valentina, who works for the Omega Group, and an unknown contact. Valentina is talking to this person, asking him if the project in Berlin is ready. It reads, "Memorandum for Weaver from Stations Chief Berlin. Subject Omega Group comment. Sir, I am writing to alert you that we have recently intercepted communications between Dr. Alexandra Valentina of the KGB's Omega Group and a suspected operative here in West Berlin. We have done our best to track her movements and activities since she arrived in East Berlin last week. While we are still trying to determine the precise purpose of her visit, the contents of this intercept support our suspicion that Omega is setting up a major operation here in the US occupied sector of the city." And then below that we have the transcript of the intercept, which is translated from German. "Valentina, need update on site. Unknown contact. Readings confirm membrane permeable. Has date been determined? Unknown contact. Acknowledged. However, some starting to question if this is even possible. Valentina, eliminate the doubters. No margin for error. Ground must be prepared. Unknown contact. Understood. We'll make example of them. Valentina, good, but do so quietly. Do not lose element of surprise. We are currently working to identify Valentina's contact, but cannot match with any known Omega or KGB asset. I will keep you advised of our progress." So in this we can see the CIA have intercepted a conversation between Valentina and someone they don't know of. They tell us they can't match this unknown contact to anyone they know within Omega or the KGB, which tells us this person might be working alone, but also the fact that this conversation is translated from German could be a big hint as to who this unknown contact is. The only person in our zombie storyline besides from Samantha that would be speaking German would be Eddie. Valentina of course is Russian, but Richtofen is German. This whole conversation was spoken in German, so if this unknown contact was speaking that language, is that a hint that this is Eddie? If so, Why is he working with Valentina? Because at the end of Tag der Toten, he was supposedly good. He's nothing like his Primus self, he's definitely nothing like his Ultimus self. Both had their problems. This version of Eddie was an innocent child. He didn't go through all of the traumas and horrors and wars that those other versions of him did. So you would only imagine this version of Eddie grew up vastly different to the Richtofen that we know. Similar to Samantha. However, if the unknown contact is him, clearly something went wrong. You might be thinking then, well, if Samantha knew Eddie as a child, then why doesn't she know where he is? Why doesn't she mention him anywhere in Cold War? Why isn't she worried about where he could be because they were best friends at one time? All of a sudden, it's almost like they don't know each other. And what could shed some light on that for us is this document from Weaver. It says, Memorandum for Carver, Gray and Strauss, from Weaver, subject, Agent Maxis. I know you all have your hands full right now shifting through intel recovered from Operation Lost Property in Vietnam, but you were featured inquired separately about the welfare and whereabouts of former BND agent Samantha Maxis, so I want to share our initial assessment of her condition. Immediately following her extraction from the Dark Ether, Agent Maxis was evacuated by our strike team, placed under medical supervision and transported directly to Requiem headquarters. Preliminary physical and psychiatric evaluations were performed en route. She was found to be in surprisingly good physical condition considering her ordeal in the other dimension. While we estimate she spent roughly 48 hours there, Agent Maxis claims she was missing for many months. Psychological and metabolic data support her claim, but further details are slow in coming due to post-traumatic stress issues and apparent gaps in her memory. We will continue to monitor for indications of brain damage. I ordered her confined to the quarantine suite, where she will remain until further notice. Though she was operating in an unsanctioned capacity, she is not to be considered a prisoner. However, we need to know what Maxis learned about the other side, and it will secure her cooperation personally. For the time being, only myself, the director, and Requiem medical staff will have access to Maxis as we continue running tests on her. All data and findings will be shared with you as I deem appropriate. I will permit you to interview her when conditions allow. Until then, focus your efforts on the intel from Omega Outpost 25 and its implications for future ops. Weaver. So after Firebase C, after Samantha was rescued from the Dark Ether, as she was transported back to Requiem headquarters, some physical and psychiatric evaluations were performed on her, and what they found out was very interesting. The first thing we already knew is that time in the Dark Ether works differently. Although she was only trapped in there for 48 hours, she says she was missing for many months. We already know that to be true from other people that were trapped in the Dark Ether. They tell us the same story. Time seems to be a lot slower, but Weaver also revealed to us that she's suffering from post-traumatic stress and gaps in her memory. Now, even before we were told this, I said a couple of months back that Samantha may in fact not remember past events. Even before this, it's funny that there is a massive zombie outbreak going on, yet we never hear Samantha mention the fact that she's experienced this before. You would think that would be something very important to tell Weaver. If Samantha's witnessed something similar to this as a child, she would have told Weaver, but she doesn't mention it. So even back then I was thinking, maybe there are gaps in her memory, things that she doesn't remember. And her going through a zombie outbreak previously is one of them. Another thing that she doesn't remember is Richtofen. That could be the reason why she hasn't mentioned him or thought about finding him. She just doesn't remember him. It's a blank spot in her memory, and that also makes me think, does she not remember anything then from the previous story? When she travelled from Tag der Toten to Cold War, when she went through the light into this new universe, at that point was her memory wiped, and everything that happened to her previous to that was just a gap. As soon as she entered this new universe, Eddie, Dr. Monty, Nikolai, Takio, Dempsey, her father Maxis, it became a gap in her memory. One of the side effects of being in the Dark Ether is memory loss, so when she travelled from Tag der Toten to Cold War, whilst travelling through the rift, did she come into contact with the Dark Ether and suffer from its side effect of memory loss? But there may be some hope, because from another document, this is a diary entry written by Maxis while she was quarantined. What she writes in her diary is super interesting. It says, "Sometimes I find it hard to sleep. Even though I look forward to it, when I dream, I see faces. Faces of people I care about, and faces of people that don't care for me. Sometimes it's hard to distinguish between the two, but one face stands out from all the others. The face of a child, a boy. He is lost, damaged. I want to help him, but somehow I feel that he is dangerous. Dreams are unreliable witnesses, as too am I. Sometimes I find it hard to sleep." She tells us in her diary entry, in her dreams, she sees a boy, the face of a child, who is lost and damaged. She wants to help him, but she feels that he is dangerous. The last time Samantha saw Eddie was when he was a boy. As far as we know, she hasn't seen him grown up, and if this boy she sees in her dreams is Eddie. The fact that she's mentioning that now he's dangerous relates back to that conversation between Valentine and the unknown contact, because I think that unknown contact is Eddie, and I said it's strange that he would be working with Valentina because she is a bad person. Eddie was good, but even Samantha's telling us now that this boy Eddie, he is damaged. Something's happened to him. He's becoming like his older, grown-up self that we used to know. And it makes perfect sense for us to see him in our next map, Berlin, Kino der Toten. So guys, there we go, that is it. That is all I have for you for today's video. As always, hopefully you have enjoyed. If you have, you know what to do. Drop a like rating, make sure you are subscribed, and we'll see you all in the next video. Until then, goodbye.